Hi, Jolie.
Hi there, Joylynn.
I'm Joylynn Blake, and this is Joy with Jolie. And that is not just a title, my friends. That is something that I genuinely experienced with this woman. I'm the director of Scholé Academy, and Jolie Hodge is the president of Classical Academic Press. And she happens to be my boss, but a woman that I highly respect and revere for many reasons. But one is that she was kind of on the ground floor of Scholé Academy, and I have just taken what she has been part of the architect of and worked to steward that. So I wanted to rope her into having a conversation with me, just looking back at some Scholé Academy goodness, looking ahead, getting some of your reflections, Jolie, on where Scholé Academy has been and where you see it headed, and anything else you want to talk about.
This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited about this because most of our conversations are fun, and now we'll just record one. This is so great. I'm so glad that you invited me to come and chat with you. And I am equally grateful for the work that you've been doing and you as an addition to Scholé Academy. So I feel like the community has just blossomed and flourished under your leadership over the last couple of years. So this is a treat for me too. And who
Well,
knows, maybe we'll do more of these. Who knows?
yeah, now that we are costumed in,
Yes.
like manner, I felt that, this could be part of a series. Now, tell me a little bit about just the history, your start, even if you want to, your start with Classical Academic Press, but then kind of how Scholé Academy got underway. Because one of the things that I proudly note is
Hmm.
that we were long before COVID. So we've been doing online
Yes,
education and doing it well long before people were forced to do it.
that's true. We did it by choice. Yeah, so let's see. So the story of Scholé Academy kind of fits inside of the story of Classical Academic Press. So very briefly, I'll share that Classical Academic Press was started back in 2001 by Chris and me and one other teacher at a small private classical school here in local to us. And we incorporated around Chris's table in his office as headmaster one day after school. Um, Chris has always been a visionary, and he very quickly noticed as the headmaster of this little classical school that, if we teachers were all kind of scrambling to pull together the best right resources for our students, it was probably very likely that other classical school teachers across the country were doing the same thing. And so his vision was, well, if we're doing this and we're creating some really great things, maybe we should publish these things and make them available to other people who might benefit from them and how we could bless them and that kind of thing. And so that's how it got started. We started with Latin for Children and the Art of Argument, and we did Latin for Children A and Art of Argument, and then I think it was Latin for Children B, and then Discovery of Deduction, and then Latin for Children C, and then the company just kind of kept going, and we continued to build out all of that curriculum. And like I said, that was back in 2001. And I think when we started the press, and then it was a little while later, I dropped off, even though I was a founding owner of the press. I'm not a founding owner of the press anymore. I sold my part of the company in 2008. But I think it was right around like 2013 or 14, Chris and I were chatting again, and he said that he had a vision for something else. And that vision was for homeschooling families in particular. Our texts have always been built with the homeschooling family in mind, and lots of great resources, because we know that on the publishing side of things, families, they really like to be able to kind of cater to the needs of their child. And some kids really love geography. So there's an abundance of that in The Curious Historian, but you don't have to do all of that. You could instead focus on something else. But like our curriculum has always been built with lots of a different like accoutrements, so that like a homeschooling mom could kind of pick and choose things that in addition to sort of the core that she might want to build in around. And so we've always had the homeschooling family sort of at the heart at what we're of the company and who we're trying to bless and serve. And another way that Chris thought about blessing these families was with Scholé Academy, which is essentially like an online co-op, if you will. It's not like the other schools out there that are trying to offer you everything, like all of third grade for your child. It's really intended to be a tremendous resource for parents who are trying to homeschool because they want to actually be educating with their children, not outsourcing everything. And they enjoy that. We wanted to be able to come alongside of them and offer them something that would be a great resource for them. And so this online co-op called Scholé Academy was sort of formed in 2014 was the first year that we started offering classes. And it started off small. There was Shelley Johnson, who is the author of Everyday Debate and Argument Builder. And the two of us offered, I think it was just like 4 classes for a total of 8 students. And it was like a beta version, just a test balloon to see this work.
I love that. I've got to interject here because one of the things that you brushed quickly over was in those starting time, Latin was the first book, but Art of Argument being the second, I believe, for Classical Academic Press, which you authored. And with the Art of Argument being like, it's become, I think, a mainstay for tons of people teaching their children logic and how to talk because of how it's structured in such an accessible way, friendly, fun. You get to travel along with Socrates and learning, the fallacies and so forth. And I want you to take a little side quest to tell the story of when you started teaching at Scholé Academy and even, you as a mom, young one, off to the side, off camera. We work very hard to keep our classes very personal and relatable in real life, and I think that was true even at its inception, right? And it's carried on. But anyway, so pick back up with the Jolie as one of the starters of Scholé Academy.
Well, that was a real, I was like many other of our teachers and our instructors at Scholé Academy, where I did have a little one at home. She was going to, gosh, what grade would that have been? She was in early elementary, and I needed to be at home with her during the day, but we had financial demands on our family at the time, and I needed to do something beyond, I didn't have the liberty to just stay at home. And that's probably true of a lot of families where whether the Lord might be meeting a lot of the needs in one avenue, but sometimes just a little something else would be really helpful. And that was the case with us. And I started off as a contractor. I didn't start off as an employee. I was just doing what all of our other instructors do, like, offering the classes, and students would enroll. And there, my daughter Anna would sit next to my desk. She would usually come in with a book of some kind, something to color, and she would just sit and listen to me hosting the classes online, which is really kind of fun because she ended up learning her logical fallacies very, very early without me knowing. And I really wasn't trying to, get ahead on things. But I'll never forget, she was in the 4th grade going to school, and they were having a conversation about a book that they were all reading. And they were supposed to be picking out different character traits of the different characters as part of like learning how to read a book. Mm-hmm. And Mrs. Alas emailed me one day after school, and she said, I think you'll get a chuckle out of this. We were going around and asking students for different character traits of the different lead characters in the book. And when I got to Anna, I said, well, what character traits would you point out? And I can't remember the name of the book or the character at this point, but she said that Anna picked out this one character and said, she resorts to sweeping generalizations quite a bit. Mrs. Alas was the 4th grade, and she was like, come again? And so, I was chatting with Anna. She was like, oh, after I got this email, and she was like, oh yeah. And she rattled off the definition, and she explained like how the character was doing that. And it was all because she had sat and probably listened to way too many lectures that I had given over the years, and she had learned her informal fallacies.
Well, that adage about how more is caught than taught.
Oh yeah.
And actually that's another thing that I love about having my own daughter in Scholé Academy and other things, is that entrusting her to what can be caught from the instructors, not just overtly taught, like the character traits that they demonstrate and who they are as people, and what she's absorbing from them and from just their own life and virtue.
Yeah.
It's just a huge blessing to me. And so I think that that's a little story that attests to what is true about, there's so much more than what goes on in the overt instruction in the classroom. So
Sure.
it's important to pick the right teachers.
But, in addition to that, I think it was in part, I think for Anna, that she was listening to the other children. So she couldn't see them, but because I kept her off camera, but she was hearing the kids talk and share and ask the questions and give their examples and wrestle through and figure it out as well. And I'm pretty sure that if it had just been me and they were all silent with just like a chat box running or something, it probably wouldn't have had the same impact on her with it just being all lecture, but it was because there was an exchange and she heard other kids enjoying it and getting it and having fun with it and learning it, that then it made it even more appealing and accessible to her as somebody who was just catching it.
Absolutely. What's funny is I hear also from parents, because it's not just the little kids that are lurking off camera.
That's
There are
true. True.
parents and others that myself, we learn so much. It's like being part of the learning journey that
Yeah.
our whole family is taking. And I hear from parents who say, my goodness, this has amazed me. And this has provided such rich conversations for what we talk about around the dinner table and things like
Yeah.
that. So yeah, it's great to be able to overhear the exchange.
Yes. I remember getting emails from parents who would email me and, saying things like, this has nothing to do with Susie's class. I mean, with Susie in class, but I happen to be listening and I heard you say this and I have a question about such and such or how that goes. And I ended up, building some friendships with the moms who were like off camera, sometimes kind of doing what Anna was doing. They weren't just sitting there, but they may be paying the bills or, doing something else. But I was within earshot of I was within earshot of where they were, and they would hear something and then it piqued their interest and it made them wonder something. And
Yeah.
because we're an extension of what's going on at home, they were looking for ways to kind of tie in and pull in, so that they could incorporate things into the other courses that we weren't teaching.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that I think is so precious too that I've heard our instructors say, some of our instructors talk about how, my voice is entering into someone's home, into their space. And
Yeah.
that is a great honor and a great responsibility. So even though, our physical bodies aren't present with one another, just realizing that there is this interaction, my voice is in the home, and it's
Yeah.
beautiful to be entering, like you said, this conversation that they are having. And then we get to be this addition to it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been those relationships with the moms were some of my most favorite parts about teaching at Scholé Academy. And some of those moms, I just got an email from a mom this past week who I haven't seen or talked to in years, but she reached out. And so we've been emailing back and forth. I ended up having a kind of an odd health crisis one year, and I got showered with blessing from these homeschooling moms just reaching out to me with, emails of prayer and letters in the mail and just all sorts of different encouragements along the way and, things they would make sure that their kids would bring to class or whatever. But these moms, it really did feel like I was part of the co-op. I was another piece of the co-op, and they welcomed me in, and it gave me a sense of community. But I got the benefit of being in many communities, because I was a one to many kind of zone. But
Yeah.
that was so, and they helped shape and form me as an educator because I got to learn from them too. But that was an unexpected. I didn't realize how much I would benefit from the friendships with the moms, because they weren't just dropping off their kids at school the way that happens at a bricks and mortar school. They were weaving you into their homeschool co-op in some ways, or what they were doing, and now you're part of that.
Yeah, you're so right. Because, like, even I think it was just yesterday, still a stray Christmas card had made its way to me because I think it was delivered at the office first, and then it gets rerouted to me and everything. So precious from one of our dear families, just getting a peek into their life and what's going on. And I love the relationships that are formed across these adults who are all invested. I mean, so many of our own Scholé Academy instructors are themselves homeschooling parents that are on this journey. So it really is this community of shared. I heard someone say recently, it's not necessarily like mindedness, but like heartedness. And I love
Mm,
that phrase. You know, there's a lot of
yes.
heartedness among our community. And do you want to talk a little bit, since we were just going over the history of things, do you want to talk a little bit about another thing that I think is so unique about Scholé Academy and the co-op and the community that it is, you know, kind of our houses and the vision for
Oh,
that,
yeah.
because that does bring in just a wider breadth of people that gather together that maybe geographic location would limit. But I want to
Oh,
talk about
sure. That was really fun. So it didn't start off with different houses. When
that.
we started off, it was Scholé Academy, and we were, we were offering classes just really based off of, really the teachers that we could find that could offer really great classes. But in 2018, the Scholé Academy had grown enough that, so to be clear, from 2014 to the end of the 2017, 2018 year, Chris Perrin he was the Scholé Academy director. And for any old timers that might be listening to this out there, they might remember the name Emily Price, and she was working with Chris. And like I said, I was a teacher, just a contracted instructor, and then I became sort of a lead teacher kind of thing. But I was a contractor, and it wasn't until 2018, 2019 school year that I came in as the Scholé Academy principal, and they hired me as an employee. And then I went down to teaching, I think, just like one class, and then like trying to help run and manage the school. And I got to work very closely with Emily, who I still think of so fondly. Anyway, but that's a whole other trip down memory lane. But at that time, in 2018, Classical Academic Press had been in conversation with Adam Lockridge, who at that time had been the owner of St. Raphael School, which, as everybody knows now, is our Orthodox house of study. But it had been an independent school that had started right about the same time that Scholé Academy had started, by Dr. James Taylor, author of Poetic Knowledge. And then James Taylor had sold it to Adam Lockridge, and then Adam had been teaching and everything. And through all of those transitions happened outside of me. But that same year that I came in as the principal, they were in the middle of an acquisition and purchasing the school, Adam. A lot of familiar names still were here. Father Noah Boschelli is still a part of St. Raphael School. Presbytera Maria is still a part of the school, and there are likely a few others that I'm not thinking of at the moment. But we brought it in, and Chris shared his greater vision, which is this is going to be the first but not the only one of our houses of studies. And we really wanted to have a place where we could invite Christians to come, and from all of the great Christian traditions. Jesse Hake and I wrote a little blog about it, sort of talking about it like a piazza, or sort of like a marketplace, where people can kind of all come from different places and offering different goodies of different kinds, but all under the same tent. And so we were going to call the school Scholé Academy, and we wanted to keep our great hall. The other influence was C.S. Lewis and the introduction to his book, Mere Christianity, where he talks about what is mere Christianity. What are the things that would be sort of like the bullseye that we would say Christians, writ large, lowercase o, Orthodox Christian beliefs that we would all rally around and say, this is what we believe. But he said, that's the great hall, and you aren't meant in one of those great English homes to live in the great hall. You go and you live in the rooms, and that's where the fires and the chairs and the meals are, he says. And so you do have to pick a room, he says. But we knew that Scholé Academy's great hall could be the place where we could teach and offer classes where a particular Christian tradition wasn't necessarily at on the forefront of how the subject needed to be taught. Certainly, different traditions always play a part in some of the particulars, but that there were some courses like math or Latin or logic that could be taught in the Great Hall, that where we could all come together and be together as one body of believers, all being educated together. But then we could have these other houses and what Lewis was calling the rooms, where things could be authentically and particular to a particular Christian tradition, where we wouldn't be asking families to kind of compromise or sort of whitewash over some of the important distinctives and differences that shouldn't necessarily divide us, but it's not necessarily something that we hold in common. And so St. Raphael School was the first place that that happened, and we had to communicate our commitment to them that we weren't bringing them in and then going to try to change them. We wanted it to stay distinctively, authentically Orthodox. And then after that, I reached out to Father Nathan Carr, who has written Festive School with CAP, and has written he has kind of curated the prayer book, the student prayer book. And he's been a friend for a long time. And I met him at a conference I was at one time, and he struck me as somebody who knows how to just kind of get things done, and he's got a great vision. And I reached out to him and told him we wanted to build sort of a reformed house of study. And so we went, and he's a Episcopal priest, and so we started working together. He really does know how to get things done. He heard the vision. He heard Chris's vision. And I think it was in with just a couple of months, he had written a grant to get enough money so that he could fly himself and me and another handful of people down to Savannah, Georgia, to go to Father Dunbar's. I think it's the first Episcopal church down in Savannah, Georgia. That's not what it's called. It's called I think it's called St. John's. I have to go back and double check that. But he made arrangements with Father Dunbar. He had money set aside for us to be housed and fed and be able to, be down there for a week. And we hammered out, sort of what is the vision for the Canterbury House. And there's still some more work we could probably do there, but he made it happen. And I was so appreciative of his efforts. And then sometime after that, we built out the Aquinas House of Studies. But that was your predecessor, Joanne Shinstock, who was Catholic herself. She was very instrumental in helping to get Aquinas House kind of moving and going too. So I don't want to leave her out of somebody who was an architect in some ways. But we really wanted a place of welcome and authenticity where these families could come in and be blessed and experience the fullness of their faith as they were grappling with different topics and issues and courses and so forth. And it's been a delight to see them grow. And then this isn't so much a house of study, but we had the tutoring center, but we also started the Center for Students with Learning Differences while I was the director as well. And that was just something I feel like the Lord just kind of brought together at just the right time and just the right way. I had been privileged to work with the Templeton Honors College at Eastern University as I was working on my master's. And Dr. Amy Richards was one of my professors, and she taught a course on difference and human dignity. It was a powerful class, a really powerful class, and that message has resonated with a lot of folks. And my end of course project was I could write an essay or a project or something, but I went to her and I said, for my end of course project, what do you think of me starting a Center for Students with Learning Differences at Scholé Academy? And she was like, yeah, I think that'll work. But she really helped build that with me. And it was her philosophy and it was her teaching that really informed what we wanted to do there and how we wanted to do it and what human flourishing is really supposed to look like for families and for children who are made in God's image, but sometimes feel like they can't have the blessings of classical ed. And we wanted to dispel that notion. And so that was another project that we took on because we wanted another way to bless people where they were. And it's sort of a similar philosophy to the houses of studies in some ways, but, not so much with a theological lens, but with a lens of what does it mean to be what is a paideia education, that full body education, soul, mind, and spirit under the context of human flourishing and human difference. And God's been good to bring us so many great people for all of those different programs to help grow them and bless the people with them along the way. Anyway, that was a very long-winded answer, but
I love it though because it's an articulation of one of the reasons that whenever I was, invited to come on at CAP, I was like, this is something I can do. I can get behind this. This is something that I feel so heart-mindedness in this. I guess two things come to mind, Jolie. One is, growing up, I was mostly going to a traditional style Christian school. And one of the things that I encountered in coming to Scholé Academy that I thought was so beautiful, so rich, and so unusual is the opportunity for one's definition of Christian education to be quite expansive, because I was surprised to find how much of Christian history that I wasn't quite aware of, that seemed quite
Mhm.
obscure, the traditions that I didn't know or wasn't familiar with. And so it was just such a rich opportunity for exchange. That was one piece. And then, as you and I personally, from our conversations, just accessibility to classical education is a major passion and
Uh-huh.
personal conviction to me. I don't talk about it too much because I get choked up pretty easily about it, but I think you and I too, we understand that, having had our own stints living across the oceans in other countries and working with people in various countries, there is this heart and sense of the people of God all over the planet, and
Mm.
our desire to connect and make this richness, and this piazza a
Mhm.
place where people can really connect, and that wherever there are barriers, insofar as we can kind of take them down just a little bit, we
Yeah.
we feel extremely grateful for that. And that's why, I love the fact that we can do online and we can stretch all over the globe. I mean, insofar as time zones will permit it, we have families crazy waking up at 2 a.m. to, I want to take this class. So, which is amazing. But again, just back to the heart of the
Yeah.
different houses, the tutoring center, the Center for Students with Learning Differences, and even just the whole variety of countries, families, military families that we serve, various ambassadors, missionaries, all kinds of people that have found a place that they can connect with. Scholé Academy has been just a huge blessing, and it's a part of the vision that I thought, oh yeah, I can
Oh yeah.
instinctively get on board with this.
Yeah. I think, and I don't think you have to live overseas to be able to see this, but it certainly was part of my formation of seeing it. But, as Christians, what I grew up realizing, that for true believers, there's more that we hold in common when it comes to our faith than divides us. And I'm not in any way suggesting that the differences aren't important ones, but that cross is big and wide. And when you believe in that cross and you believe in Christ's, life, death, resurrection, there is a real magnetism and cohesiveness that comes from us being able to share in the gospel and that good news. And there are certainly places and times to have some of those other conversations, but there are lots of reasons and times when we should let those conversations stay in the rooms and come out into the great hall and fellowship together. And
Yeah.
that is one of the beauties of Scholé Academy, is that it gives us an opportunity to come and and link arms with our brothers and sisters across the world, across the country, and be a part of the church universal, as we are sort of called to be. And you're right, when I grew up in Saudi Arabia and we were meeting in an underground church that nobody could know about because it was illegal to be doing so, there were people there of all different Christian traditions, and the thing that we held in common was Jesus
Yes.
Christ.
But
And I sometimes, when you are just forced into narrower and narrower opportunities of faith expression, you really do decide what is the bullseye here and who can I worship with, and yeah, but there weren't any other options. I mean, maybe weren't a conversation with somebody who might not know, but there are places where our families are living where, there aren't churches on every corner.
yeah.
And they are not permitted to worship freely. They're not permitted to pray in public, or, any. So
Yeah.
it's a real blessing to them to have a place where they can come together with other believers and be open about their faith. And yeah, so it really is a beautiful ministry in so many ways.
And going from, that handful of students and those
Oh,
couple of
oh yeah.
classes now to what, like, I mean, we have well over 2,000 students, families, et cetera, and all these different countries, and well over 100 different instructors and sections and things like that. But Is there anything that you feel, I don't know, you want to comment, past, now, future, what you see or what you hope for, anything like that?
Well, this is that's a good question. The thing that I hope for is, and I think we've already seen quite a bit of it, but you and I were just talking about this phrase the other day, this idea of soulcraft. And that education is soulcraft. And that is, and I think to your point you made as well, just a little bit ago, and that is that, I didn't grow up thinking about education that way. My parents didn't grow up thinking, or at least they didn't raise me thinking about education just that way. It wasn't that, I'm sure if I would have asked, and I wouldn't have been able to articulate this way, but if I had asked them back then if they thought that, education belonged in a silo separate from faith, they would have said, oh, no, absolutely not, that it doesn't belong that way. But I don't know that they, or like the opportunities that we had, would have allowed for it. Like, well, in what ways do they intersect? In what ways are they informed by each other? And I think that that's one of the really beautiful, rich things that's come from the renewal of classical education in this country, is that for people who are looking for it, you can now find and easily see like why it's so important that these two things are not kept separate, and how education isn't just about knowledge and getting a good job, but it is this other thing. And that's something that I think we can still push further. I was telling you that I've been invited to go to my daughter's school and go to the open houses there and sort of talk a little bit about why this overlap, and that there's this idea of rightly ordering our loves, and Augustine talks about it, Aristotle talks about it, right? But there's these rightly ordering our loves, and the piece that was missing, and all sorts of loves, making sure that they are in the right order and in the right amount so that we are oriented to God. I don't think I fully appreciated just how much education shapes our loves, and so that education, when it is not aimed at soulcraft, when it's not aimed at cultivating virtue, when it's just aimed at knowledge and information and test scores and good job and good pay, we miss the opportunity to really shape the loves of our children so that they come to love what God loves even more. And we can misform the shapes of the loves of our children because we are allowing education. We think we can tame it, and that it can be towards material ends, or it can be towards other kinds of appetites, and that it's okay because it's just education, and I still go to church and I still have this other spiritual experience. But I think we might not realize how the power that education has, because it does shape our loves, that it can shape them and help us orient in towards virtue and towards God, or it can misshape us and pull us towards vice and away from him. And I don't think that I've put all of that together even early on in my career. I'm not sure I fully appreciated it, and that's where I think we still have more opportunity to unpack that and think and to grow in that as moms and educators alike.
Yeah.
But that was revelatory for me, or revolutionary for me, to think of education that way.
Absolutely. And I do think it's a lifelong journey. It's like that you use the word our appetites, because I often liken it when I'm trying to just kind of give someone a quick little vision about what it is we're doing. Everyone understands instinctively what it is to try to expand your child's palate, from chicken nuggets and mac and cheese to maybe a little bit more expansive palette, and all along the way there is this helpful negotiation that you do as you're raising your child, that you're not beating them over the head with broccoli all the time, but you instinctively know as a mother what it is to have a good healthy diet and you're constantly working to weave in this expansive palette and plate of things, and it's not in these isolated, like what they eat at this meal alone or on this day alone is the determiner of their nutrition and their overall health. No, it's like this whole life, day in and day out, habits and atmosphere and attitude towards
Yeah.
something. So that's what I think we often talk about this at Scholé Academy and at Classical Academic Press in general, that we are trying to lay a banquet, a feast, and it be and nourishing. And so that's what I encourage folks when they're thinking about, like, well, is this education, or is this effort, or is this curricula, or is this whatever? Is it good enough, or it's not? And none of us think that we can have a fully well-rounded diet at a single meal. And sometimes we need those quick meals and everything. So it's not like we're passing judgment,
Right.
but it is thinking with the long game in mind and with the kind of rich and healthy person that we want our children to grow to be. So that vision of soulcraft, or spiritually forming, but how that is a manifestation in all areas, body, soul, and spirit, and how you cultivate those appetites by what you're serving up on the table.
That's right.
So, yeah, I like that you mentioned that as part of, definitely Scholé Academy's vision and constant effort that we are trying to elbow somebody out of the kitchen or out of we'll take it from here. We've got it. We're the chef. And not at all. We're together in the mix of things, and we're just bringing all that we have kind of together to the banquet. And
Yeah. It's kind of like a potluck, in a
yes,
lot of ways,
yes,
because, that's what the homeschooling family is bringing to the class is there can very often be a tremendous contribution, not just what the teacher is bringing, but what those kids are bringing from their experiences and that they're, and it's like sharing family recipes in some ways,
yes.
and getting the benefit of all of that. So, we're doing, I think, we kind of do at Scholé Academy, I think we do our best to tell everybody, hey, we're having a party, right? We're having a potluck. We want to feast together. We want to be able to have contemplative opportunities to enjoy the rich truths and the beautiful truths and the good truths that are there. And so we're going to host, but we want everybody to come and participate. We want everybody to bring a dish. We want everybody to come together, and that's how this tradition continues.
Mm-hmm.
And how we are part, all of us, part of that renewal of classical education, but we are part of the long and storied tradition of the liberal arts tradition over the centuries. And this is just our moment in time to be passing the dishes around and tasting and seeing that it's good and keeping it alive for the next generation. And that's what those recipes are. That's what we're bringing. And I think
Yeah.
I think it's fun, and I love it. Those are just rich, beautiful, wonderful times, and I do miss those things. I don't get to do this stuff anymore.
Well, listen, I'm going to make you jealous because I love that you said, the students themselves, the children, they are part of the conversation. It's not like they're part of bringing the meals to the potluck and the banquet, that what they contribute. And it was the cutest thing the other day. That this is a little behind the curtain. Our instructors have this little, board that they can exchange things as instructors, like here's some resources, or here's a funny class story, or here's this or that, whatever. And one of our instructors recently posted a little snippet of a speech that one of the students delivered in a writing and rhetoric class, and she was just celebrating, like, I was blown away by this, because naturally there was a portion of it that they had to memorize and deliver, as their rhetoric exercises. So but he did just such a phenomenal job. It was, I can't even remember. It was maybe an extract from Henry VIII's speech. I can't remember. It was some, rallying military cry of some sort or whatever. But his recording of it was so innovative, and kind of, he did some extemporaneous things that embedded, like where he had imaginary off-camera people that he was, calling in or doing, and then weaving in some biblical references and things like that. It was just so entertaining, one. And then also on the other layer of it was also such a clear manifestation of he's getting it, because it's not just this regurgitation of here's this thing that I memorized, but it was the application of it. And everyone was enriched. Everyone went away from that particular, meal.
Yeah.
Like, wow, he really brought it. And I feel so honored that these families will share their student with us
Yes.
because I can tell you we enjoy them. We have a great time with them.
Yeah. The Scholé Academy families, there is something really special about the families that are looking for this.
Yeah.
And even, and they're it's not any one thing that, people are complicated. What they're looking for in education is, wide and varied. But to your point about it being sort of like-hearted and even more than like-minded, there's something about the sweetness and how savory those conversations are, how rich they are, the generosity, the goodness, the respect for each other. They're all kids and they act like kids do and everything. And they're not robots by any mean, but there is just something really special about it. And it just like raises the tenor of all of the classes with these expectations that students can perform well, and we can resource them well, and we can support them well and encourage them well, but they know how to love each other well, and they know how to be encouraging and supportive to each other, and they know how to plumb the depths and look for the delight and share that with one another. There is something very unique about it that these kids, they bring it, and it's infectious.
Yeah.
And the classes take on a feel that a teacher alone can't manufacture. It's got to be that the children respond, the students respond in a particular way, and it becomes obvious, oh, that's what we do here. That's how we are here. And it's something very unique. It's very unique.
Oh yeah. As you know, and I love this about us, that we're a la carte, and every family just about is kind of like a patchwork quilt, a mix and match of what works. Typically speaking, I think the whole taste and see families tend to add more and more Scholé Academy courses as they're like, oh my goodness, I did that myself, because obviously I was like, math and science, guess who's not teaching that at home at the senior level? We're going to be outsourcing some physics instruction, things like that. But then I found the richness there of that community dialogue and everything. Then I was adding courses in our various houses of study. Then I was adding literature and history, even though I'm a lit and history person. I can, but I was adding that to fill out our, kind of homeschooling reality. And in addition to that, my daughter was, hiking over to the local little community college to get a few college credits under her belt, and she made this comment too, that something about one of the courses she was taking, she's like shrugging, yeah, I'm just doing that for the credit. The education I'm getting is at home, is at Scholé Academy. So yeah, it's been a rich blessing to so many, I mean, my own family included. So I'm really glad that you could take a stroll down memory lane and the history of everything. Is there anything else you want to add or speak to?
Well, I know you're getting ready to launch another school year for the 20, and I can't believe I'm saying this because it just makes me feel so old, but for the 2026-2027 academic year. Where did life go? Anyway, but you're getting ready to start you're going to be launching. So I guess my question for you is, what are you excited about because you've got, the baton was passed, you've got it, you're running this next leg of the marathon. And don't worry, for those of you who are listening, I've already told Joylynn that she's never allowed to go anywhere or do anything else. So that'll never happen. But what are you excited about for this next leg of the journey?
That's a great question. Well, one of the things that I kind of love is that, Scholé Academy started by offering the courses of the incredible textbooks that CAP published. That part of the vision is like, you know what? Some people want their kid to take Latin, but they don't necessarily have the chops or the confidence to teach it. So let's do that. Same with logic, same with whatever. But then it just started to kind of expand. So well-ordered language and writing and rhetoric and the histories relatively newer in the lines, the Curious Historian and Humanitas and other things like that. And Scholé Academy's just kept pace with all of that, like because there's all this richness and we can offer that. But in addition to that, Scholé Academy has even outpaced CAP in some respects because, I mean, and if I'm not supposed to let this out of the bag, then we can edit this out. But I mean, we haven't done math yet, but math is on the way.
That's right.
Yeah! I'm so excited about, CAP producing a math line.
2028. 2028.
But in the meantime, it's not like families can stop their kids from growing up or pause their own education until that happens. So obviously, Scholé Academy was like, we'll offer math classes. Yes, we will teach that algebra too. Or yes, well, we will teach that pre-algebra. We will teach that whatever. So Scholé Academy has expanded beyond, the courses have expanded beyond the texts that Classical Academic Press has published.
Right.
And in that vein, I guess I'm excited about, as we've listened to families, as we've worked with families, as we've heard and looked at the vision for what is scratching an itch and meeting a need, we've expanded our courses that way. And so like, oh my goodness, I love the Navarre Science Line so much. I secretly tease John Mays in the background. I'm like, so when's the elementary line coming out? The middle school, life science, physical science, earth science, all that jazz. And then of course, all the natural, biology, physics, everything on up. But below, there's also the beauty of what can be done in the lower school and in the preparation stages before you get to kind of more formalized studies. So I feel excited about, like, we have nature studies and we're expanding those nature studies. And then we started these new courses called Science for Beginners, and they can and it's a way of nurturing that wonder that we're always talking about with our science education, but nurturing that in young people, and where their appetite, they start to develop that taste for what will become more formal, life science, whatever. In the coming year, this is a little sneak peek. They can do Science for Beginners that focuses on like Earth and space, or Science for Beginners that focuses on, the name is slipping me, just a second, it's going to come, bugs and birds. Oh my word. Maybe that's the nature studies, bugs and birds. I think it's like trees and living things. Science for Beginners, living things. So there are these ways that it's expanding to partner with families at whatever stage the felt need is, whatever stage the students have a particular appetite that the parent wants to stoke even more. And I mean, we have a whole array of art courses and all kinds of things. So with that, I get excited about the fact that, with us, families can find things that will probably scratch an itch in some way, shape, or form, whether it's a subject that they're really passionate about, or even like, I want to focus on like sitting down with my child and doing this, but I have this other child, so it's a great little partnership in that regard. And then just expanding what's available to our upper school students for really rounding out some formal studies. I mean, for example, we have in the upper school, we have these bundles that they can take, like history and literature pairs, whether ancient studies or medieval studies, but then there are also these companion opportunities, like yes, you can study ancient history and literature. You want to go really deep, you want to add a mythology to that, or you want to add, in the medieval studies, you want to add, a reading of Dante's Divine Comedy or Augustine's City of God. So all that, this is again another long answer to something, but so my excitement is in how we are able to build more courses, a greater variety of courses, and frankly just more sections of courses that people can sign up for and really feel that it enriches their homeschooling experience.
That's wonderful. I'm excited. Can't wait.
Yeah. Well, hey, thanks for chatting with me today. I hope it's one among many.
Yeah, that would be fun. Let's do it again.
All right, see ya.
Right. See you.